Okay, good morning, everyone. Actually, it's 1 p.m. here. So, good afternoon, good morning if you're on the West Coast, California, Seattle. I guess, is Vegas also Pacific time? I'm not sure. Anyhow, we're going to start this stream today with good news. Balogun has been added to the roster, and I wasn't really going to do this live stream. I didn't really have anything else to say after the roster stream, and we released the video today breaking down, going through all the U.S. men's national team transfers this summer. But a lot has happened the past few days that I think is important to address. One, obviously, the good news that Balogun will be in camp, right? That's important to talk about real quick, and I want to talk about why he was added because it is not that he was added that is idiotic. It's what was needed for to happen for Balogun to be added that is complete nonsense. We're going to talk about a tweet from Alexi Lalas, which I know you all very much love, Alexi, and he talked about a quote from Pochettino talking about Europe and MLS, and some rumors out there that Joe Scally is like banished from the national team by Pochettino and the staff. We'll talk about why very soon, about what the streets are saying or what people are talking about. So yeah, we're gonna go through all of that. So why don't we start with the Balogun news, which he has been added, and don't worry, we're also going to talk about the MLS conspiracy, the MLS quota thing, which I've talked about many times. How I don't believe there's an MLS quota, and I know some of you are going to be pissed at me. It's like, how can you not believe it? And I'll tell you why I don't believe. I believe there's an MLS influence within the federation that maybe it trickles down to the U.S. men's national team coaching staff and all that. But I don't believe there's a quota, right? I don't believe there's anyone in the federation or Don Garber himself or anyone just going to like Pochettino and his staff and saying, hey, you need to call up X, Y, and Z, or you need to have X amount of players from this team or X amount of players from that team. I just don't believe that happens. And if it is true, then what is even the point of following this team, right? So if you believe that is true, it kind of even loses the purpose of following this team if that's how things are run in the federation or how it's managed. So Balogun was added to the roster. And here's the thing, right? Here's the thing. When the roster was released on Tuesday and we did the stream of the roster, there was 22 players in the list. There were 22 players in the list. So we were missing one because Pochettino wanted to bring 23. The one player that has been added was Follering Balogun. Okay. But here's the thing. Out of the 22 that you saw in the list, Brian White was not in that list. Why? Because he's injured. Because originally, and I'll show you here evidence, originally, Brian White was the 23rd player. Because this is what the Vancouver Whitecaps official account posted. They posted Berhalter, which is Sebastian Berhalter, Tristan Blackman, and Brian White have been called up for the U.S. men's national team training camp for their upcoming September international friendlies. So Brian White, and then they all go on and say White will miss camp and remain in Vancouver to rehab a hamstring strain sustained during Saturday's match in St. Louis. So the only reason Balogun was called in is because Brian White, yes, Brian White is injured. Otherwise, he would have been the 23rd player. So listen, and you can say, maybe just Balogun wasn't fully fit yet. Balogun played 90 minutes this weekend. So it's hard for me to believe that Monaco didn't know that he was fully fit by then. Otherwise, he would have come off the bench. Otherwise, he would have been on a minutes restriction, but he wasn't. Okay? So the only reason, and look how crazy this is, the only reason Balogun is in camp is because Brian White got injured. Okay, and we're going to talk about now a quote from Pochettino that Alexi Lalas even posted, and a few others talked about as well, which is a very disingenuous quote in general. But before we do that, make sure to drop a like in this stream if you haven't already. Drop a like, share it, drop a comment, whatever you want. Great way to support the channel. So that's the first thing. And I want you to remember that Balogun is only there. He is only there because Brian White got injured. Okay, I want to make sure you know that. So Alexi Lalas says, break out the tinfoil hat or the tinfoil, right? Of course, he would say something like that. So let's go through the quote that he's actually sharing from Mauricio Pochettino. And this is what Pochettino had to say about MLS and Europe. And the reason I want to address this quote is because the way, I guess, the way he worded it is a little bit disingenuous. Because yes, MLS is better than a lot of leagues in Europe, and we're going to talk about that in a second. Tony said, "Stop it. I have been a fan for years, and all sort of sports and U.S. soccer fans could be the worst." I've been around NBA Twitter for quite a bit, and I can assure you, U.S. soccer fans are not worse. I can assure you that. But this is what Pochettino had to say, and these are Pochettino's words. All right. He said, "We need to open another way to see things. We need to give MLS value because we give it value. That's a weird way to word it. But again, it's not his first language, so very weird way to word it. But let's go. Because I think competing there, which is MLS, the player can show that they can perform in the national team. It's not necessarily to move from MLS to Europe because sometimes MLS, under my assessment, is more competitive than some leagues in Europe. And this is what I have an issue with this because here's the thing. MLS is better than plenty of leagues in Europe. Europe is a continent, right? And also there's multiple divisions. I firmly believe that MLS is better than the second division of Italy, and that's in Europe, right? I think MLS is better than the San Marino League. I think MLS is better than the Belgium League. So, of course, MLS is better depending on where you are in Europe. But here's my question to you. Is MLS better than the Bundesliga? Because you did leave Joe Scally out and you brought Nathan Harriel, for example. That is not even a young and upcoming player, right? Like Alex Freeman is justifiable. But why is Nathan Harriel there? You had Brian White ahead of Balogun. Is MLS more competitive? Is it better than Ligue 1? I don't think so, right? I don't think it is. You left out players that are playing at better leagues. Simple as that. And saying Europe is disingenuous because when you say Europe, there's a lot of really bad leagues there. Plenty of bad leagues. I think MLS is better than the Croatian league. Some people disagree with me. I think they are. But again, I'm an MLS hater. So he went on to say, leagues in Europe, we have some players maybe competing in different leagues that maybe are not so competitive, or in every single week competing in the same way that you compete in MLS every single week. But that's my assessment, and that is the way I see it. This is why we don't compare. Oh, if you play in a team in Europe, you're above the players that are in MLS. This is not the way to assess players. I think one thing we are good with the coaching staff is to see and project the players and how they can perform with us. Once again, it's not every single player in Europe that you have ahead of an MLS player. It really depends on how they're playing, where they're playing, if they're getting minutes. For example, right? For example, James Sands is in Europe right now. It doesn't freaking mean he's better than MLS defenders, even though he was among the best defenders, right? Aiden Morris was one of the best players in MLS, one of the best midfielders in MLS. And now he's among probably one of the best midfielders in the EFL Championship. He didn't get a shot. Is the championship worse than MLS? I don't think so. I guess that one would be up for debate, but I don't think it is. And here's the problem when we talk about MLS specifically. And I don't know if you guys agree with me on this one. I don't think the level of MLS is the problem. The problem are the American players in MLS. And hear me out. MLS's best players are not American. That's a big issue. And I'm not saying bring back Pulisic, McKennie, Adams, everyone come to MLS. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is MLS doesn't really limit the amount of foreign players because as far as I know, if the player is a permanent resident, which would be a green card holder, for example, which shouldn't be that hard to get a green card as a professional athlete in MLS, it won't count for any international slot or whatever. So you can essentially have plenty of non-Americans playing your team. You look at teams like Orlando City, who's American starting for them? Alex Freeman. Inter Miami, very often they have 0 Americans playing for them. LAFC, another top team, they don't have many Americans starting for them, right? It should be at least half. But the league has, obviously, and again, that goes back, oh, why are you unhappy about Paxton Anderson? Because I want MLS to improve its level before our players come back. And if MLS simply increases the salary cap drastically, stops only signing foreign players as their stars because it's much easier to grow the league that way, right? Spending millions and millions of dollars on players like, well, I mean, you bring Messi when you can, so on. But again, the goal is not to grow soccer in America, it's to grow the league. And that's not helping, right? Increase the salary cap, reduce the amount of foreign players that you can have here. Because again, you can still have the international slots or whatever it is for Messi, Son, these like really big stars. But there's a lot of like young talent from South America that when you sign that, you're taking a spot from an American young talent in MLS. That doesn't mean we're going to magically get better on it. We're just going to make the American player more competitive over time. Increase the salary cap, reduce the amount of foreign players. There are things that can be done. But the thing with MLS is the level of MLS itself. MLS, in my opinion, is better than the Scottish League. That's another one to say where Carter Vickers plays. But the problem is not MLS. It's the American players in MLS. The American players in MLS are not good. There are plenty of MLS players that would be in the U.S. national team and would be among the best players. Plenty, right? Jordi Alba would probably be there. Messi would be there. Son would be there. Ricky Puig, when fully healthy, would be there. Gabriel Peck, he would be there. Hani Mukhtar, honestly, probably would be there as well. So there are many players that I can go through that would be in the U.S. men's national team roster. Some of them would be starters. The problem is not MLS. It's the American players in MLS. And when Pochettino says something like this, it's very disingenuous because he says something like this, and this is what he said. This is what I want to highlight. We don't compare. If you play in our team in Europe, you're not above the players in MLS or whatever. Be specific. Like, what leagues is he referring to when he says that they're worse than MLS? Is it Scotland? Is he talking about Carter Vickers and Austin Trusty? If he's saying that, I kind of agree with him. Now, what about the top 5 leagues? Because you left a lot of top 5 league players out of the roster. Joe Scally, Johnny Cardoso, right? That's 2 right there that are playing top 5 leagues. They're not in the roster. And then you get like Aiden Morris that plays in the EFL Championship, which, as we said, it can be debatable if it's better or worse than MLS. But it's definitely not a lot worse, right? It's just kind of weird for me to see Pochettino say this. I would assume he knows better. And it's funny for me to see guys like, well, not Alexi. I can see Alexi being very disingenuous with this, but people getting this quote as if Pochettino's saying that the top European leagues are not more competitive than MLS. That's not what he said. He said it very broad. He said Europe, which is really stupid. Then it goes back to that joke. No one is asking for the 3rd division Lithuanian American to be called in. But, I mean, we talked about it, right? Tenor Testament is starting for Lyon. He's a good player. Why is he not in the roster? Johnny with Atletico. Sure, it looks like the club wanted him to stay, and Pochettino agreed. Johnny's another one. Joe Scally starting in the Bundesliga regularly for 3 to 4 seasons now? I think 4 seasons, actually. I'm trying to think other players in top 5 leagues that weren't called in. I mean, Balogun, right? He was called in now because Brian White was injured. But even so, why is Haji Wright not there? Haji Wright should have been there, right? It's just very inconsistent from Pochettino at this point. And it's getting very tiring. Finally getting... I didn't get into any conspiracy. I actually rejected the idea of an MLS quota. I just mentioned it because I want to mention this. It was a book, I believe, released by Cruyff, and I just want to talk about this for a second. USMNT Takes, a really good account, by the way, USMNT Takes, that I follow. And because of the USMNT roster, he said, I'm starting to believe this. It's a quote from a book from Cruyff, and this is what Cruyff said in the quote. Let me try to drag this up. He said, of course, there are drawbacks to this mentality. Jurgen Klinsmann, a coach of the U.S. national team since 2011, often couldn't select the best possible team because he was obliged to include someone from each franchise. So essentially, what Cruyff was saying, Johan Cruyff was saying that Klinsmann was there. He was saying there's an MLS quota that Klinsmann had to include someone from like whatever franchises. He couldn't take 4 players from one club, for example, because every franchise contributes to the national budget. They each need to be able to present an international to their own fans. I don't know whether that's still the case, but I do know it's very restrictive if you're a coach. and something like that would delay the national side's development by years if it were to continue. So the reason I bring this up, I mean, Cruyff putting this, it's written, right? So it's kind of interesting. But Jurgen Klinsmann never commented on this, as far as I know. I've never seen Jurgen. He didn't deny it, but he also never confirmed it. I've never seen Jurgen comment on this, and this could be me. Maybe he did put something out there, and I just didn't see it. Uh, I just don't believe that because, like I said, if that is real, if that is legit, what is even the point of following this national team if its priority is to promote MLS and not put the United States at the top of the top of the top of soccer worldwide? Get the best possible results for our country. If the goal is to promote MLS, what's even the point? So I prefer to not believe that it's true. I also don't think there's any concrete evidence that it's true. I know some people are going to say, it's like, look at this roster. We'll see. Let's see how many MLS players will be in the World Cup roster. Right now, Pochettino might literally just be testing, which I think it's stupid. He should be able to see it just through the games, but I want to see the World Cup roster. Now, if the World Cup roster comes out and there are 7, 8, 9 MLS players, I might start believing that there's an MLS quota. Then I might start believing. Because I can see the 3 goalkeepers being from MLS because our goalkeeper situation is so bad right now. I could see that happening. The goalkeepers being from MLS, that's 3. I can see Luna securing a spot, right? Because I don't think he should have a lock. He shouldn't be a lock, Diego Luna, but he's earned the benefit of the doubt, even though he struggled against good opponents. Tim Ream will probably be there, even though it seems like at some point we have to move on from Tim Ream. Dude's getting very old, very ancient, but still there. But I could see 5 players being there. Outside of that, like, bring in Alex Freeman. Is he better than Joe Scally? Is he a better option, more reliable than Joe Scally? Joe Scally was actually fine in the Copa America that we sucked. I don't know if you guys remember that. Playing week in and week out in the Bundesliga, which I have to assume it's a better league than Major League Soccer. Sebastian Berhalter over Johnny Cardoso, over Weston McKennie, honestly, even over Yunus Musa. Like, really? Like I said, if it's like 5 MLS players, I can see that happening. It wouldn't be too crazy. If we have more than that, I'm sorry. I'm going to start to believe in the whole conspiracy. Now, before I go through the super chats, I want to share this because this is something that these are rumors that some people are saying are true. It's not just Edgar that's talking about it. And it's not sarcasm. It's not a joke. This is a legitimate rumor that's out there about Joe Scally not being included. And if you don't know, Herc Gomez interviewed Joe Scally and Gio Reyna on ESPN FC. And it was kind of an awkward portion of the interview when Herc asked Joe Scally about not being in the roster for the Gold Cup and now. And Scally was just kind of like, yeah, I'm disappointed. I wanted to be there. And he's not there. And the streets, and this is what Edgar had to say. The streets are saying that Joe Scally swung, so he did a donut spin with a golf cart. I don't know why he said car, golf cart, in the last camp he was in. Pochettino and staff didn't like that, and that's why he's not being considered for the team anymore. And then Edgar said, I don't know if this is true, but it's a stupid reason to include him, to exclude him if it's true. I'm just putting this out there because Edgar has been right a lot. Not always, but a lot. I think if he did a donut spin with a golf cart, he should definitely be included. Okay, I'm joking about that. But it's funny because when we talk about that, I also mentioned this comment because Pochettino said this a while back. I don't remember exactly. I think it was closer to the summer. So that kind of matches that theory that Scally might have messed around with a golf cart and the staff didn't like it, right? So USMNT head coach on the mentality and expectations he wants to see. This is what Pochettino had to say from the players heading into the camp of the Gold Cup. And this is what he said. If you arrive in camp and you want to spend a nice time, play golf, it's a bit weird. He didn't really specifically mention the donut spin, but again, the wording starts to match, right? Go for dinner, visit my family, visit my friend. Is that the culture that we want to create? And then he said, no, 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 no. He pulled like a Mutombo right there. No, 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 no. What we want to do is go to the national team, arrive, be focused, and spend all my focus and energy in camp, in the national team, whatever, right? In the national team. That's what he said. But again, nice time, play golf. He was probably referring to Joe Scally. Maybe a few others, right? Because Pulisic also likes to golf in camp. I don't know exactly who else he was talking about. I'm just saying that the shoe seems to fit. And when I talk about conspiracy, this is a conspiracy theory, I would assume, right? It's speculation. We don't know if it's true. I don't think anyone's going to be addressing that. I look, and this is what I have to say about it. Let me actually pull this off screen. What he said there is right. You want the players to come into camp and focus on the national team and not be messing around, visiting family, and just thinking it's like summer camp, or that they're just traveling back to their country to enjoy the United States, and then they'll come back to Europe, and in Europe it's serious, in the United States it's the mess, the joke. You don't want that. Now, if Joe Scally did that more than once after Pochettino talked to him, I would understand why he would say, you know what, Joe, it's done. You're out, Joe. It just can't work. If it happened once, and I firmly believe Joe Scally is good enough to play for the national team as the backup of Serginho Dest, and honestly can even be the backup of A-Rob because he can play right back, he can play left back, you would think he would get another chance. Now, is maybe Pochettino just sending him a message? Maybe. That's another possibility, right? We talked about this on the roster stream. Well, sometimes when we have our supreme leaders in politics, or in this case, Pochettino, we always think there's a plan. And we always think they're playing 4D chess. And we never think that maybe the guy might not be the brightest. Maybe he's just human like all of us, and he makes mistakes. He makes bad decisions. He makes good decisions. He makes bad decisions. And that applies to Pochettino as well. He could just be making a mistake. Will Joe Scally get another opportunity? I'd like to believe so. We have this camp in September. Then we have October, November, and March. We have 3 more camps before the World Cup call-up. So after these 2 games against Japan and South Korea, the U.S. men's national team will have 6 games left before the roster is called in. I would like to believe Joe Scally will be given a second chance. I would like to believe. Will it happen? I don't know. Time will tell. But everyone, don't forget to drop a like in the stream. If you just made it here, I'm going to read the super chats. I went through Balogun being called in for the national team. I went through Pochettino's assessment on MLS, which, again, I agree. I agree with the assessment that MLS is better than a lot of leagues in Europe. I just wish he was specific to which ones he's referring to, right? I'm going to put that quote on screen again while I read the super chats in case you just made it here. You can read the quote yourself. It's this one here. But again, I agree that MLS is better than plenty of leagues in Europe, but I wish he had an honest conversation and was specific about which leagues him and his coaching staff rate above MLS in Europe. I wish he was specific because there's probably 7 or 8, right? In my opinion, he was not specific about it. He was very broad, and I find that to be very disingenuous. Because he could just say, look, me and my coaching staff, we have our criteria of evaluating players. We have our metrics. And these 5, 6, 7, 8 leagues in Europe seem to be more competitive than MLS. Everything else is less competitive. That's an honest conversation. But why be honest when you can not be honest, right? Like most people these days. Juan is saying, will your team sign Breck Shea for the TST 2026? Be for real. Juan, I'd love to have Breck Shea on my next TST team, but Breck Shea, I cannot afford Breck Shea. I'm not even joking. CONCACAF has him, and I'm not going to be able to take Breck Shea from CONCACAF. If I could, I would, but I can't. I don't have the budget to take Breck Shea from CONCACAF, so unfortunately, I will not have him on my TST team for next year. Perry saying U.S. soccer's purpose is to make money for MLS and create cushy jobs in the federation. The fans be damned. And I'm losing interest. What I have to say about what you're saying is I don't really disagree with anything you said. And the part of losing interest, I don't blame you. I wouldn't say I'm losing interest. I would say it's slowly killing me inside. Because back in 2021, I was very excited for this team, very excited for the direction we were going, even with Berhalter, a complete idiot in charge, mainly because of how exciting our generation was, and there was still promise that the federation would want to do what's right, but time went by and things are not looking good. It looks a lot worse, and I don't like what Pochettino is doing either. Queen Nadra is saying Wilfred Nancy plays better ball than Pochettino. Wilfred Nancy is a good MLS coach. I would not be opposed for the U.S. men's national team giving Nancy an opportunity. Now, would that be better than Pochettino for the U.S.? I don't know. I don't know. It's not like he's a guaranteed success, but I find him to be a good coach, Wilfred Nancy. He's done a remarkable job there in Columbus. So um, I would have absolutely no issue with that. I mean, BJ Callahan too, right? BJ Callahan was good with the U.S. national team for a short period of time when he was there, and he's been quite good with Nashville as well. BJ Callahan's another MLS coach to consider for the future. I have not been happy with Pochettino. Now, listen, on Monday, we will release the U.S. men's national team abroad episode on Monday. And then, if I'm not mistaken, next week we have the preview for the South Korea game, and then we play South Korea on Saturday. I want to thank you all very much for watching. Don't forget to drop a like before you go, and let me know in the comment section of this video. Once I close this video, go to the comment section and let me know what you think, more specifically towards this quote on screen right now. Did you think Pochettino was being disingenuous for saying Europe instead of specifically pointing what leagues in Europe him and his staff rate above MLS? Or do you think what he said was fine, right? It seems like Alexi got a 207th bone. The human body has 206. He got a 207th bone when he read this quote. He loved it so much. And Juan is saying, do you think Bradley, Dad, so Bob Bradley and Michael Bradley combo would be a good fit? I think Bob Bradley's time as the U.S. men's national team coach is over. Bob Bradley. He's had his time, had a good run, actually. Now, Michael Bradley, I believe he's coaching, is it Red Bull's B team? Let's see. Let Michael Bradley coach a senior team. Let's see how he does. I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to Michael Bradley being a U.S. men's national team coach in the future if he's good enough. Why not? He's a USMNT legend. Deadly Brian X, let's bring John Brooks back. Oh, no, look, I defended John Brooks for years. He's done. Like, he's been in the second. I don't think he even played last year. The dude was injured. Unfortunately, John Brooks is finished. Unfortunately, it was a really good center back, and I miss him from the 2014 World Cup, and he was good for Wolfsburg not so long ago, but it's over for him. Thank you very much for watching, everyone. Don't forget to drop a like before you go, and when I close the stream, drop a comment in the comment section sharing your thoughts. I will be reading it over the next 24 hours, and I'll reply to a few. Thank you for watching, everyone. Have a great day. Have a great weekend. Oh, and check out our USMNT summer transfers video. If you missed any transfers, we did a transfers recap video with Pete. It's out already on the channel, and we rated every single transfer. That's the last video, not stream, last video that we just released. Okay? Bye.